Good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to this EPC post-election policy dialogue. I'm just giving it a few more minutes until we get started, as I see people are dialing in still, until people are connected before we get started. All right. Good afternoon again. A very warm welcome to this online election monitor on the German federal elections organized by the European Policy Center. My name is Johannes Greubel. I'm a senior policy analyst at the EPC, and I lead our work on connecting Europe. I'm delighted to moderate this event today, this discussion with four great speakers who I will have the chance to introduce you in a few minutes. After my colleagues discussed already the immediate election results in an election monitor yesterday. We want to take the chance to have a dedicated event looking at European perspectives on the election results. So what do the results mean for Germany, for Europe, and for global politics in this decisive period from different perspectives? To discuss that, I'll have four speakers with me, which I'm introducing now. We have Hennadiy Maksak, Executive Director from Ukrainian Prism, who will provide us with a Ukrainian perspective. We have Nicoletta Pirozzi, Head of a program on European Union at Istituto Affari, Internazionali, with her insights from Rome. Skóra, a policy fellow at das progressive Zentrum, who can provide us with her analysis on how Poland sees the election results. And finally, our very own Maurice, a policy analyst at the European Policy Center, who will shed light on the future of Franco-German relations. So, yeah, maybe as a way of introduction, I think most of you will be aware of the results already, but let me say a few words to kick off our debate. The dust has settled. We have a pretty clear result with the CDU-CSU coming as a clear winner with 28.5%, and Friedrich Merz in a clear position to enter the chancellery. Also, in terms of possible government coalition, things seem rather clear. A coalition with the Social Democrats is the only feasible option at this point, apart from, of course, a coalition with AfD, which was ruled out beforehand. This means that we have a potentially rather stable constellation with two coalition partners, not three as in the past years, two partners who've been in what we call grand coalitions over a very long time in the past, and the leadership of both parties that already met today and will start official conversations soon. The time for that is scarce. The geopolitical context doesn't wait for a new German government to be built. Merz therefore already said on the evening of the election that Europe is looking to Germany and that a fast agreement on a government is necessary, and he said Easter as a timescale for that government. So we have a clear, stable, foreseeable result for that, Germany, but at the same time, we're seeing unprecedented rise of the far-right AfD, who will become second strongest group in the new parliament, having received 20.8% of the German electorate. We see deep dissatisfaction with politics in Germany, driving voters to the political fringes. So, and as mentioned, we have a rapidly evolving geopolitical environment with many challenges for the government to face. So as the electoral dust has settled, we're now looking at what this will mean from a European perspective, how Europe looks at the results, what is at stake, what is required from this new government. And I look very much forward to the debate over the next 60 minutes with you and with our speakers. Before we start, a few housekeeping rules for all participants. We want to make this debate as interactive as possible, and that means that you will have the chance to come in at any point with your questions and comments during the event. And you can do so in two ways. First of all, you have the chance to come in live by raising your virtual hand, which you can find in the bottom of your screen. I will then give you the floor when time comes, and you'll have the chance to ask your question live. Or the second option that you have is posing your question via Q&A in the box on the bottom of your screen, and I will weave in your questions into the conversation. In both cases, please keep your intervention as short as possible, as we don't have too much time. But with this, let's dive into our discussion for today. Maria, let me start with you. You have looked at the election results from a Polish perspective, particularly. What are your key takeaways for these election results?
Hello, Johannes. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Well, when I looked, when the election results came in, I had three instant reflections. First was that this insecurity and frustration that started in Germany around 2020 with the pandemic is not yet gone. And then that the outgoing traffic light coalition did not manage to blow some fresh wind in the sails in Germany and convince the public that the country is actually heading in a good direction. It didn't manage to improve the mood. So it's yet another government voted out after in the post-pandemic insecurity. The other reflection I had was that there is still political disaffection in the society, and the so-called K-Frage, so the question who will become the next chancellor. Well, it's clear now, but there's no clear, convincing leader. Actually, most of the politicians are perceived rather negatively. I think only Boris Pistorius is scoring high in the evaluation of his work. So Germans are tired of politics and politicians. And last but not least, we see fragmentation, votes spread across the whole political spectrum, polarization, the left and the right, raising, especially the far right, so also radicalization with the AfD, and a visible East-West divide. So I'll leave it here with my first reflection.
Thanks, Maria. And maybe as a direct follow-up, particularly as you're currently based in Warsaw, what do you expect from the Polish-German relation on that basis? How does Poland look at the situation? Merz yesterday in a press conference said that he values his Polish partners very much, that for strategic discussions, he always wants to look to the right, to the east, to the eastern neighbors, and that he has with Donald Tusk a convincing partner there. So how is that perceived? How is the perspective of Merz becoming chancellor perceived in Poland?
So just to give you a context, just some contextual information. Well, first of all, the news and the media on Sunday were dominated by President Duda's visit in the United States and the fact that the health problems of the Pope. And please don't forget that there is a presidential campaign going on in the country, the presidential election scheduled for May 18th. So all those other directly connected with Poland events directly connected with Poland have maybe overshadowed a little bit what happened in Germany. Nevertheless, of course, the media and the public opinion have noticed that there most probably will be a change in Chancellor's office. And from what you can see, well, Donald Tusk and Friedrich Merz represent the same political family, Christian Democrats. So also Merz has already behaved a little bit like a chancellor to visiting and touring Europe. In December, he was in Warsaw. He already spoke with Tusk. That Poland pops up 5 times, I think, in the election manifesto of the CDU. So is quite present and will be present in the agenda. And Merz already mentioned that Poland is among the countries he wants to work closer with within the Weimar Triangle, beyond the Weimar Triangle. So long story short, I think there will be yet another new opening in Polish-German relations. And there is this political or partisan affiliation, alliance, as well as a certain common denominator of interests dictated by the geopolitical situation. And I'll leave it here for now to talk in more detail about what those other areas, arenas of cooperation could be.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. We'll certainly come back to that, but I want to circle to Eric now with a French perspective on the election results. What are your thoughts on and expectations from a government led by Friedrich Merz?
Thank you, Johannes, and good afternoon to everyone. So looking from a French perspective first, we can look at the parliament of the new Bundestag. And as Maria mentioned, there is fragmentation, but we can also argue that with the 5% threshold, we avoided further fragmentation, and that makes the picture clearer and the coalition probably easier to find. Which is seen from a leadership perspective, rather good news. The second observation is that, as in other countries in Europe, but more especially in Germany, unfortunately, history is not an obstacle anymore for the rise of the far right. And so the reluctance of voters to vote for these parties doesn't exist anymore. And further, we saw that with the intervention of Musk and Vance, Vance recently. There is a double dynamic for this kind of parties, and that also, of course, is a long-term concern for the whole of the EU. And last observation, with this limited fragmentation and the fact that the coalition will be most certainly a two-party coalition, Friedrich Merz is probably stronger than we could have feared ahead of the vote, especially as the SPD itself is weaker because of the result and the fact that there is a leadership void there. So that put Merz maybe in a good position to exert some kind of leadership at EU level, and with this additional dimension that he is from the CDU-CSU, so from the EPP, which is the main party at EU level, and he could use this affiliation as Angela Merkel did when she was chancellor, meaning that EPP has a new an additional strength at EU level, and it is also something that will be used by the German chancellor. And also he's quite hands-on on Europe's main issue for now, which is defense. So it could be an instrument for him to exert this leadership at EU level. And of course, there is the Franco-German dimension. Seen from Paris, Merz is seen as probably a better partner than Olaf Scholz, who was very disappointing to that regard. Merz is considered as a Francophile in the footsteps of Helmut Kohl, who wants to engage with France, who wants to take the EU forward, who apparently has a closer view on defense and security closer to French views. So that could be promising. But of course, and we can discuss that later on, but there would be questions about how this Franco-German motto can work, and especially as seen from Berlin, Franco-German relationships are on the same level as German-Polish relationships, and for France, that's maybe also something to factor in.
Thank you, Eric, for this initial assessment. I want to drill a bit deeper on what exactly we can expect from that tandem, the Franco-German tandem, particularly maybe also looking back where under Scholz the tandem was stuttering a bit. Whereas you had now a more confident outlook when it comes to Friedrich Merz. So what can we expect? I know there's already been exchange between Merz and Macron already. So what can we expect, and maybe what are concrete areas where we can expect Franco-German leadership in the future?
Well, first, I would start with a caveat. 3 years ago, when Olaf Scholz became chancellor, there was the question of whether this would work better than with Angela Merkel in the end of her term. And everyone in France thought it would be easier with Scholz than with Merkel, with an SPD Green government, even if FDP was there, but it was mainly SPD Green who were looked at, and we thought it could be better. So now we think that it can only get better with Merz than with Scholz. Friedrich Merz, during the campaign, said that he would work with Macron, that he thought Macron was quite dynamic at EU level and he wanted to work with him. So we can expect some kind of Franco-German initiative soon once the government is in place. Defense could be the main topic because it's the most important for the EU now. But I would caution everyone against the fact that France and Germany always had different conception and different definition of what strategic autonomy should be, what European defense should be about. And of course, the transatlantic relationship, although Merz was quite clear on Sunday, most probably Germany will try more than France to mend with Trump and to try to accommodate Trump's demand on EU defense and involvement. And the same, if they do not have the same views on like security guarantee for Ukraine, for instance. France, of course, is ready to go there. Germany was not under Scholz, and I don't think it would be easier for Merz to decide that step. So even on that, which could be the main the main way for Franco-German initiative to be taken, there would be a lot of discussion needed to find a proper compromise. And of course, again, because that's very important, Poland should be also on board. So it's not only a bilateral alignment to find, but a trilateral alignment to find, which of course makes things more difficult.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the overall European approach, which Merz already outlined in the first days after the elections. We want to come to Ukraine in a second, but before that, I want to come to a perspective from Rome, to Nicoletta, with your take on the result. We do have at least a chance for a stable German government, but also the far right gained considerably. So what are your expectations in that context? How might the result of the German AfD feature in to the tone in Germany over the next years? And so what's your takeaway of the overall situation, and maybe also some thoughts on the far right, particularly from an Italian perspective?
Thanks, Johannes. It is a pleasure to participate in this exchange. And the elections in Germany were followed with particular interest here in Italy, I have to say. And also the results were welcome generally, because I mean the perspective of having a coalition between two parties, the Union, CDU, CSU, and SPD, is perceived as a sign of stability for the German government in the next few years. At the same time, as you mentioned, we noticed a lot this widespread support that Alternative for Deutschland was able to gather. I mean, the expectations were even higher in terms of what kind of threshold the AfD could gain. But I mean, getting more than 20% of the votes is being considered as astonishing for a political party such as AfD, given also the history of Germany and the current situation of the political spectrum. So this marks on one side a shift toward the extreme right that cannot be underestimated in Germany, like in many other European countries in Europe. And it is also a sign that there was a general success also of non-mainstream parties in Germany. If we couple this result with the result got, for example, by Linke, which has been also underlined a lot in the political debate in Italy in the aftermath of the election. We also saw clearly this divide between East and West Germany, which is quite interesting. We have a similar experience here in Italy between the north and the southern part of the country. So, of course, this is also telling about the political situation. What has been also underlining the comments about the German election has been the extremely high turnout in the elections. This is something we have not experienced in the last few elections in our country, but also as a general rule in the European Union. So this willingness to participate and also the consensus that was given, as I said, to non-mainstream parties are all elements that should be carefully considered when we look at the immediate future, political future of Germany, but overall also the winds flowing towards the European Union as a whole. When it comes to Italian political forces, again, there were very different reactions also within the coalition which is currently governing Italy. As you know, we have a tripartite coalition with Fratelli d'Italia, the party of Giorgia Meloni leading, and two other political forces, Tajani's Forza Italia and Salvini's Lega within the coalition. And we know that these three political parties in Italy belong to three different political families within the European Union. And this was also clear from the comments we got in the immediate aftermath of the elections results. So while, for example, Tajani has expressed appreciation for another success for conservatives in Europe, and also as a shelter against populism and against extremism in a key European country. We had at the same time Salvini greeting AfD for the exceptional result as a sign of the wind of change in Europe and also the possibility of a radical change on the political identity of the European Union. So we had very different interpretations about the results. And then we had Giorgia Meloni, who was silent for the first phase of the when we got the results, but then apparently she had a phone call with Merz, not only to congratulate him, but also to reiterate the willingness by the Italian government to work together and to pursue in particular the common interest that can link not only Italy and Germany, but also these two particular governments. So in particular, issues such as security, competitiveness were touched upon, and of course Meloni wanted to underline some specific themes, including migration and for example the sector of the automotive, because on these two particular aspects there is a perception, at least a perception, that the two governments can come closer compared to the previous phase when Olaf Scholz was chancellor, and Italy and Germany can work together also at the EU level to make some improvement in these two particular fields.
Thank you, Nicoletta. A lot to dive in, particularly when it comes to some of the issues. You already touched on competitiveness, security, but also migration, where I think the call between the two of them between Meloni and Friedrich Merz was also focusing on. I want to bring in the Ukrainian perspective now. Hennadiy, you have a different take, I'm sure, on the election results. From a Ukrainian perspective, what are your takeaways and what are your expectations for a government led by CDU and SPD?
Johannes, thank you so much for the possibility. And basically, if to refer to the expectations and some unexpected issues from these elections, I would not say more that was said by my colleagues, because it was really some surprises, record high of AfD, record low for SPD. And I think that these results are very, very important to understand and to analyze for future. What is on positive side, that coalition might be done in two parties, in two political forces. This is a good sign, and I think for Ukraine it is more important to see that there is stability, at least for quite a short period, maybe the first near future, when we see that all the developments are unfolding when it comes to separation or not separation of the United States, when it comes to common agenda, to some issues which are also quite lingering on our way when it comes to arms production, when it comes to possible communications with our partners overseas. So in all the directions, we see that two parties might work well, and we expect them to deliver on the issues which were also already on the agenda during the Scholz government team, but also with new blood in this coalition. So what Merz produced during his campaign and being in opposition, I think now it might change for Ukraine in positive some attitudes. The first one, that when we are talking to our partners, we always trying to refer to security guarantees. And in this regard, NATO, as we perceive in Ukraine and we talk to our partners, is the cheapest one when it comes to our joint security architecture and to joint deterrence to Russia. Merz flagged several times that he is for keeping NATO on the joint agenda of partners when talking about future security guarantees. This is a good sign, and maybe it's a good counterbalance to United States and to previous position of Olaf Scholz, which was critically opposing this idea. Another issue is maybe to deblock the long arm, which might be also perceived as deterrence, how to dissuade Russia of attacking Ukraine by air, and maybe to just close the moment for negotiations. So these are two important issues which we see quite important, but we also expect more leadership on the level of European Union and NATO, and as well as coalitions. Eric mentioned that it's not only about Franco-German or some other bilateral schemes, but also about regional coalitions. And Germany proved to be very efficient in coalitions of capabilities. Germany is leading some of them, and one of them is very crucial, which is air defense. And it appears that even systems are from America, for example, Patriots. Germany is the leading partner in delivering the system to Ukraine, in delivering some systems, some interceptors. So I think that we still rely on our partners in Berlin just to keep this coalition, to keep it growing, expanding, and to give all is possible to protect Ukrainian citizens in Ukrainian cities. Another point, it was also mentioned when Merz visited Ukraine last December. He mentioned that he is in favor of, I would say, the coalition of willing nations. France might be there, Poland might be there, Italy might be there, Great Britain might be there. So it already appeared as E5 project when there are some announcement just in the eve of the Munich conference. So I think this idea of having these nations with a great potential for the defense production and industries might also be a counterbalance if we have some bottlenecks and some problems on the level of 27 of European Union, on 32 of the level of NATO. So I think on bilateral level, on coalition level, and on the level of EU and NATO, we have positive expectations from the new government. The only issue I would like also to buttress up what Merz is saying, that it should be a swift decision and good negotiations, because we need a stable government in Germany.
Thank you, Hennadiy. And I think we can maybe come back to the swiftness point in a second, and also to the transatlantic relations that have been has been dropped a few times, or came up a few times already. Before doing that, although I wanted to bring in other speakers on Ukraine. Maybe Maria, starting with you, what's your take on the government's role regarding Ukraine? What will we see from a coalition formed with a new chancellor, but also with personnel in the SPD that might be a bit more supportive in terms of some of the issues that were blocked by Scholz in the past, who will not again be part of the new government?
Well, Friedrich Merz has been very vocal about his position towards supporting Ukraine, and also Europe needing to step up, especially vis-a-vis of what happened in the United States on November 5th and the comeback of Donald Trump. So also the visit that Hennadiy mentioned and I mentioned, that the Merz tour in Central and Eastern Europe, coming to Warsaw in December, coming to Kiev in December, also points out on his pivot in taking the Eastern partners seriously. From also the manifesto and for how Friedrich Merz was advertising his chancellor candidacy, the new focus of Germany is on security in Europe, not only defense and security in Germany. And he probably wants to position Germany more as a moderator, if not a leader. It is always the unwanted hegemony of Germany in Europe, dictated by its size, but more leadership, which was, by the way, had been promised by Scholz with the Zeitenwende speech that didn't fully materialize. But back to the role or attitude toward Ukraine and bringing Poland on board, I have a feeling that, in Merz's eyes, Poland is a bridge or key to Ukraine, not only because of geographical location and the very long border with Poland to Ukraine, but also the engagement and support of the Polish government towards Ukraine, and also the understanding of the specific power dynamics in Eastern Europe, experience with Russian leadership, and generally historical experience with Russia. So this materializes in Merz highlighting the importance of the Weimar Triangle, but also Weimar Triangle Plus, right? We just, maybe 2 weeks was it, the meeting in Paris, the meeting of the 3 Weimar countries, including inviting Ukraine, inviting the UK, was it? And also trying to remain in contact with American partners, as long as they are remain partners, trying to remain and keep alive this partnership. So what I'm trying to say is that Merz definitely will try or put a new direction of the German-Ukraine policy, and my understanding is that we will also try to use the renewed good relationship with the Polish leadership to strengthen that position, and by that also strengthen the cooperation within Europe for European security, and also not in the only EU context, but also broader context, including non-EU countries, neighboring countries, and the support for Ukraine.
Thanks, Maria. Nicoletta, I want to bring you back in there and ask for your reflection on Germany's position towards Ukraine, and closely to it also linking it to the transatlantic relations. I mean, we see it with the remarkable developments in the US by the new government. We now will have a chancellor who is very transatlanticist per se, but at the same time has very boldly stated yesterday that Europe needs to become fully independent of the US. I mean, there is a question also in the chat by one of our participants on what are the expectations towards that, with Merz declaring this independence, whereas I think SPD, that's what the question that is a bit more cautious when it comes to that. So how will that be compatible within the coalition, and also more broadly, what's the challenge for the new government when it comes to the transatlantic relations?
Yes, thanks, Johannes. So first of all, on Ukraine, so it is true that there was some frustration in Europe concerning the ambiguity at some point of the previous German government concerning Ukraine. At the same time, I think we have to be careful to evaluate facts rather than declarations. I mean, with Scholz, we have this commitment to Zeitenwende. At the same time, there was a firm commitment to support Ukraine, and also at the political level, the push to have this historical decision to open our doors to Ukraine as a future member of the European Union, which was very much led by Germany, France, and also Italy at that time. Now we know that Merz would like to, be bolder on Ukraine, and made some some strong declarations at the beginning of his mandate, also during the electoral campaign. But of course, this has to be proven by facts. And at the moment, he has two main ways to prove how serious he is about Ukraine. One is to understand what will be the position of the new government concerning also the option of sending European troops on Ukrainian territory. Of course, this is something for the future, but we also have seen how strongly this has been underlined at the political level by France and UK. So Germany has to take a position in this regard. And we know that the other member of the coalition, the SPD, was very much careful about this option. So of course, we have to understand how much the compromise for the future program of the government will be led by Merz, but also conditioned by the other partner, naming the SPD. And the second element is about European defense. We mentioned it already. Again, Germany was led by Scholz, was very much cautious about the perspective of spending more at the European level on defense, for example, through new instruments, such as instruments of common debt on the model of the Next Generation EU, this time for another emergency, the defense emergency that we have. So we have to see how much Merz would like to go ahead with this idea, and also partner with other countries in Europe, including Italy, but also France, concerning this idea. This, of course, is linked to Germany's position vis-a-vis the US. And here again, I think that Merz was unambiguous when it comes to the choice between Europe and the US. In his first declaration, as you say, he's a staunch Atlanticist, but at the same time, he's also realist and had to come to terms with the situation we're all facing. Even if some in Europe still seem to deny it for the time being. So he say that Europe has to become autonomous, and I see this convergence towards France's position, but also towards Poland, as Maria was underlying concerning this issue. This would also impact on the relationship between Germany and Italy, if I may, just a short reference to it, because while Merz has clearly chosen his field, his camp in this particular moment of transatlantic difficult partnership, we cannot say the same for Meloni, who has been trying to, navigate the new situation by placing Italy at the center of between the US and the European Union, and also to propose herself as a possible bridge in the new situation. So rather than reaffirming Italy's position within the European Union as a founding member of the European Union, committed to European integration, her position has been more ambiguous, I would say, by saying that, of course, the transatlantic relationship remains one of the pillars of our foreign policy. I mean, this can be said by all the leaders in the European Union, but the fact that Meloni wanted to underline it together with her participation recently at the CPEC convention can be read as a different sign, and also can be a limitation when it comes to the future relationships with Germany, which, by the way, were particularly complicated in the last couple of years.
Thank you, Nicoletta. Hennadiy, for you from a Ukrainian perspective, particularly when looking at the transatlantic relations, the relationship between Europe and the US, what would you like to see? How would you like the new government in Berlin to position, also drawing on how other governments in Europe are positioning themselves? What would you like to see from a Ukrainian perspective?
I would like maybe to pick up to what Eric said about that maybe Merz will try to mend the relations with the United States as the first option, because in our understanding, when we have strong transatlantic solidarity, it's beneficial for all of us. So it should be definitely option A for us, because we understand in Ukraine, it was also voiced by President Zelensky and by expert community that if we see that the United States are departing from this coalition of solidarity, we might encounter a big problem on the battlefield in Ukraine. Regardless of the level at this moment of European support, which is growing with every new month, and we see it in our communication with our partners, but still we are dependent on some critical technologies from the United States. So for this time being, we need solidarity. But I think what also was announced by Friedrich Merz, that if situation is very grave, and it's not possible to find common denominator at this moment, he is willing not only stand bilaterally in support of Ukraine, but also try to garner these coalitions, as I mentioned, in different directions, which might show the, if not symmetry, but the power, the might of Europe, which might stand for its own European perspective. And I think it's also important to understand that this slogan is not just words. It's nothing about Ukraine, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. The same, nothing about Europe without Europe. And I think that even this perspective of Normandy format, which is quite reminiscent for Germany and France, I think it is still a deeper understanding that there should be involvement, engagement of bigger nations from European Union. And the bigger coalition is, I think, is not easier, but I think the voice is stronger. It's the principle peace through strength, and this strength should also be European, owned by Europeans.
Thank you, Hennadiy. And directly linking with that, Eric, not only bilateral or group partnerships were raised within the European context, but I think it was Nicoletta who also mentioned France and the UK in one context. And there is indeed a question on to what extent could this transatlantic difficulty be a positive watershed moment for the EU's relationship with the UK after Brexit, and what role could the German government play in that context? And maybe just add one more question to you from the chat to that. Because we were in the beginning discussing also about the surge of the far right and the AfD in these elections. And there is a question on what impact will this rise of the AfD have on other radical right parties across the EU, particularly given the US interventions that we're seeing.
Thanks. I will start with the question of defense and Ukraine. I think there are three main dimensions to that. The first one is support for Ukraine, military support. The second dimension is the development of a European defense with the industrial dimension and also the way to fund it. And on these two issues, of course, Germany's position on funding and Friedrich Merz's position on whether Germany should be more involved will be crucial. And there is a third dimension, which is European deterrence, with the assumption now, which we can read between the lines of different declarations, that Article 5 is not taken for granted anymore. And that we need to find a way to have European deterrence. And I mentioned these three dimensions because, of course, Germany is central to the first two dimensions, but the UK is involved into these two dimensions, support for Ukraine and development of European defense by its industrial capacities. But of course, when we speak about European deterrence, it's nuclear deterrence, and this is for France and the UK. And Friedrich Merz opened the discussion, or at least raised an option for the UK and France to enter discussions on what security guarantee, nuclear guarantees London and Paris could provide for Europe. On this, of course, Germany cannot be central, but in terms of military terms, but politically, of course, it would be very important to have this three-country discussion on how to supplement or replace the US guarantee for Europe, having in mind that for NATO, UK and French deterrence already are part of the overall NATO deterrence. So I think that's very important, that we should not keep this discussion only into EU terms, but that the UK will be a very important part of it, and not for the smallest reason will be that, of course, the UK will want to act as a bridge between Washington and the EU, and we will see Keir Starmer visit to Washington, I think it is today, how we can also differentiate himself from Macron yesterday, or how we can be with an additional offer for Trump in relation with the future of NATO and European defense. On the far right, I will speak only from a French perspective. Of course, we know that Rassemblement National is not in the same group as AfD anymore in the European Parliament, that AfD was considered as too toxic, even for the Rassemblement National, because of this re-immigration topic and provocations, and that Rassemblement National is in a strategy of being more acceptable to French voters. And this strategy has worked so far, contrary to the AfD, which has been more radical to improve its electoral results. So it's very difficult from this Franco-German perspective to see what kind of relationship there could be between AfD and Rassemblement National. But also we need to look at, once again, at Viktor Orban in Hungary, because Viktor Orban received Alice Weidel last week or 2 weeks ago. And he raised the hypothesis that AfD could merge again, or sovereign nations of Europe in the European Parliament would get closer to Patriots for Europe, which is the group of Fidesz and Rassemblement National. And the question also is how US intermediaries could intervene in that. So it's an open question, but for now, there's no trust, to say the least, between Rassemblement National and AfD.
Thank you. Maybe we can bring in Maria there as well on not only that question, but I think it's also interesting to bring in Polish perspective in that context also, maybe certain developments within the domestic context and with regard to peace, which is not in government anymore. And there is also a related question in the chat on whether you see challenges in repairing or beefing up the Polish-German relation given domestic constraints and narratives, but including Poland's research demands for World War II reparations.
So briefly adding up to my colleagues speaking about the AfD, of course, that was not left unnoticed in Poland, that new right or far right party that with a revisionist attitude towards history has almost got 20% in the elections. And you may think that that would be a universal reaction in Poland, so severely experienced by the Nazi occupation, to be astounded and shocked by it. But there is a new right political party in Poland called Konfederacja, who sits together, at least 3 of their members sit together in the one parliamentary group in the European Parliament together with the AfD, and they seek alliances. There is also one AfD member of Parliament, European Parliament, who is of Polish origin. And here they are trying to build bridges, mostly on those narratives of immigration to Europe, which is killing the spirit of Christian white Europe, on no freedom of speech, on the Brussels dictate and so on. However, of course, will be very interesting to see how these two political parties will go about the underlying conflicts or conflicting views on the cooperation with Russia, for example, or on on the war reparations and the border at western border of Poland. So also, and most importantly, the revisionist view of the Polish-German history. And if we're talking about reparations, yes, this debate was very heated, and this topic was brought up very erratically by the outgone Polish government under the Law and Justice. However, the topic did not disappear after 2023, however, was maybe reframed or recalibrated to as an expectation of more responsibility of Germany in means of reparation, in the sense of stepping up of and European defense, European security, and so on. What I think is still coming up in the Polish-German relation is the history, and many in Warsaw are of the opinion that the amount of suffering that Poland has had experienced during the Nazi occupation has not yet been recognized in Germany enough or remembered enough in the German Erinnerungskultur, and this is indeed coming back in Polish bilateral relations. Newly, it's the Copernicus group, which is a group of experts between Poland and Germany, had the idea of putting forward a new interstate treaty between Poland and Germany, the German-Polish Treaty on Common Responsibility in Europe. And I think such initiatives, I'm bringing it up as an initiative that, however, proves that despite the difficult past and different policy interests, there is still a vision of Polish-German neighborhood, Polish-German cooperation, and upscaling it, revitalizing it, reviving it, rejuvenating it, so that it would be more fitting to this new geopolitical context, to the new times that we are all living in. Security is high on the agenda of the Polish presidency. It also has become high on the agenda of, maybe will be high on the agenda of the new German government. Migration and how to deal with external borders and the security, decarbonization of economies without the cost of industrialization. So there are still areas in which the cooperation can function well in bilateral relations as well as at the EU level. So hopefully this historical heritage, tragic as it is, won't be a hurdle for future cooperation.
Nicoletta, maybe a follow-up question on you, to you. Two questions from the chat, looking at the sustainability agenda, particularly as you mentioned, the Italo-German cooperation on automobiles. Do you see that this might translate into a broader collaboration also in rolling back some of the policies introduced into in the Green Deal by the government? What's your take on this overall sustainability trend with the new German government?
Well, Johannes, I'm not an expert, but I can see clearly the growing criticism, for example, on the side of the Italian government towards past choices made by the institutions and also past governments in Italy concerning the sustainability agenda, and in particular the commitments taken in the framework of the Green Deal. Now, in the new German government, I think with the conservatives leading the coalition, there might be a position that is closer to the Italian position on this topic. Again, it will also depend how much the SPD will impact on the coalition, but we know that even within the SPD there were some resistances concerning the sustainability and climate transition agenda. So probably yes, but this I think is in line also with the new policy at the level of the European Commission. This conservative leadership that we see in Europe is clear, I think, also when it comes to the European Commission agenda, linking clearly sustainability to competitiveness. So there is, of course, a new understanding, not a revision of the commitments taken so far, but a new narrative and also maybe a new set of priorities for the next 5 years. And this is again linked also to the influence coming from the other side of the Atlantic. We know that also the new administration in the US has been attacking this policy by the European Union in a clear way. Some historical decisions have been made concerning, for example, the Paris Agreement, but also generally the new policy concerning climate and energy. We will be forced on the side of the European Union to make some important choices when it comes to importing energy from the US. So all of these, I think, will be on the agenda, and I think that Italy and Germany will be closer on this than they've been in the past.
Thank you, Nicoletta. And Hennadiy, a final question for you, maybe a twofold question. The first, as it came up as well in the chat, what are your expectations when it comes to enlargement and accession to the EU from that government? And the second, maybe looking at the immediate future, as it was brought up as well. I mean, the government laid out they want to have a coalition by April, but there's many urgent issues. So what would you like to see? What do you need to see the government and also the outgoing government to do? How should they act in the months to come, in the immediate time until a new government is built?
Thank you so much. Very good questions. Enlargement. I would say here might cite President Zelensky, who said the other day during press conference that our integration to European Union is one of these security guarantees in economic area. So I think for us it's vital. That is why on the third day of full-scale aggression, we applied for membership in the European Union. It was our commitment, it was our clear understanding that it is for us very important to be part of this union on different levels. So I think Ukrainian is serious about its own homework, and basically it is doing extra hours, I would say, in that way, and extra miles when it comes to what we have already produced in terms of rapprochement. But here we would like to see that a new government is more serious about political will, because in the end of the day, we understand it is geopolitical enlargement. And there should be coalition of willing nations which might influence the other nations in European Union member states to be serious and to be fair. If we deliver on our promises, there should be decision made by partners from the European Union. On time frame for new governments, I would say that, yeah, you're right. In the beginning of March, there would be special European Council on defense, and it's very important for European Union and Ukraine. In April, there should be a meeting on shadow fleet. Those coalition who are dealing with Baltic Sea, Northern Sea, have to make this process controlled. So I think here we would like to see continuity, because if SPD is part of the coalition for new government, I think some decision could be already made together jointly prior to new government enter the office. And we do hope that there will be more leadership, strategic leadership, not only for Germany, but for the region and for European Union as well.
Thank you, Hennadiy. Unfortunately, we are out of time already. I think there is a lot of things that still need to be discussed. However, I want to bring one final question to all of you, and I would ask you to answer in one sentence only, if possible at all. And I want to do the same that we did in our election monitor yesterday, and I will start with Eric and then go around. I would like to ask you in one sentence, what is your one key recommendation that you would give Chancellor Merz if you were to meet him? Your one most important advice you will give him. I'll start with Eric, then Nicoletta, Maria, and Hennadiy.
Well, that's a tough question. Maybe I would tell him to be clear and consistent in what he says, so that acts follow words, especially on EU capacities or European capacities to defend themselves.
Nicoletta.
Thank you, Johannes. I would say to be bold and European. So try to be, more assertive than the previous government, but clearly making a European choice when it comes to major decisions for the future of the country. Thanks.
Thank you. Maria.
Similar to my colleagues, but with a different twist, to be bold, but not to overpromise what he cannot deliver.
Thank you. And finally, Hennadiy.
I would rather ask him to leave with these statements: brave decision now, save money in future.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all of our speakers for this interesting exchange. Thank you for the participants for the many questions that went in through the chat. We were not able to answer all of them, but I hope as many as possible. I think what we can maybe as a key takeaway say is expectations are very high for the new German government. And this is also why we at the EPC won't finish with this debrief. Our work on the German elections, if you want to hear more, get the questions that were not possible to be answered in that meeting to be answered. We have an EPC update lined up for you on Thursday between 2 and 3. with Almut Möller, Yannis Emanuelidis, Fabian Zulik, and of course Jackie Davis, looking at what comes after the German elections and the Munich Security Conference. So please tune in if you're interested. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much to all of you. Looking forward to seeing you in the future. And until then, I wish you a good afternoon and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.